Good evening, everybody. Guess what time it is? It's sunset. I am going to once again sit in my car because of the mosquitoes. They ain't really been bad. I can't sit over there on that bench. They're just everywhere. It's crazy. They've done. I was already sitting over there for a minute, and they ate me alive. Anyway, I hope y'all had a good day today. I've had a pretty good day, I guess. Anyway, didn't do much, but I didn't come on this morning. I didn't do sunrise. Lord's been working with me, and he even told me to take a little bit of break, and also that, I've been coming on twice a day. I've been coming sunrise, sunset, and what every morning I get up. I get up early, and that's my time with the Lord. And when I get up early and I pray and I listen to some music and I read the Bible and I worship and I do my thing. I spend some time with the Lord. And having to do the messages in the mornings as well has been putting me in a situation where I had to. I know the Lord wanted me to do them though for time, but He told me I need to start just doing the evening ones. So that's what I want to do. And I might still do Sunrise Sunday. I'd like to do a Sunrise Sunday. But yeah, so that's where I'm at. So I'm just going to be doing the sunset every day from now on. But today's lesson is on the choosing man over God. It's about Ahaz and the altar of apostasy in 2 Kings 16. And in this chapter, we have a king named Ahaz of Judah. And Ahaz is, he's like the complete opposite of what you would call a righteous king. He's not right at all. He doesn't follow the Lord at all. He imitates the wicked kings. He wants to do what they do, or what they did of Israel. And he's so bad. He goes so far as he even sacrifices his own child on an altar to one of the pagan gods. That's how bad he is. So this highlight this story of him doing this highlights his apostasy and disobedience to God, where he wasn't wanting to do the right things at all. So he also wanted to. He tried to blend idolatry. There's something called syncretism, where they try to blend idolatry with worship of the Lord, and try to. In fact, a lot of Christianity today is kind of what that is. It's not. Easter's one of them. There's certain things that when they try to blend these pagan belief systems with Christian worship, um, and it doesn't it's not it doesn't the Lord doesn't look kindly on it, and I hate to say it, but these traditions that are within the Christian church and within Christianity, if you want to be blunt about it, that's just what they are, traditions of men. And the Bible really cautions us about that. Not worshiping the Lord with all our heart and not being all in it for Him, and trying to set up these altars that blend both. And I'll highlight what I'm talking about that here in a minute when we talk about this altar, what Ahaz did with this altar. That's in the next part. After, because the second part of the chapter goes to the Syro-Ephraimitic War, about, and then the last part talks about the altar. So we'll go through this second part of the chapter first, and then that. But Ahaz blending had these consequences. But this war happens that's initiated by Aram and Israel. It's a consequence of the disobedience of both Judah and Israel. And this was a period of divine discipline that happened. King Rezin of Aram recaptured the city of Elath and expelled the people of Judah. This was because of their idolatry. The idolatry always brings divine discipline, divine judgment. The discipline comes first. If the discipline does not work, then it comes the judgment afterwards. It's a more severe punishment that comes. If the idolatry is continued, there will be a period of discipline, and if the idolatry is continued, then there will be a worse discipline, a worse punishment. Just like if you have a child, and the child continues to do what you tell them is wrong, or you tell them they break the rules, and you discipline them, you ground them for a week. When they break the rules again, what you do, you're going to ground them for 2 weeks. God's no different. So, because of this, then, instead of seeking the Lord's help, there's a parallel account of this in Isaiah 7. It says Isaiah had advised that they seek the Lord's help in that section in Isaiah 7. But instead of doing so, Ahaz turned to a foreign power for security, and he declared himself servant to Tiglath-Pileser, and placed his faith in that human king over King Kings. And so he chose to put his faith in a man to save them from the situation they got themselves in. And he made an alliance with a man trying to correct the situation instead of relying on God, who will ultimately, the repentance required to turn back to God. They turned away from Him. They were not doing what they should have done. They were practicing the idolatry. They were not having wholehearted devotion to the Lord. They were trying to blend pagan beliefs with worshiping the Lord. All this brought this divine discipline, and then instead, still turning back to God, repenting, he puts his faith in man to save him. And in the process, he chooses a political expediency over divine loyalty. And how he does that is Ahaz uses the temple and royal treasures to bribe the Syrian king. So he goes in to the temple and he takes all the treasures out of the temple and he uses them and gives them to this king that he's going to save him. So he takes from God and gives to a man to save him. And this is a clear sign that he values political security more than he values his covenant with God. He had no loyalty to God. He wanted security, but he didn't have the faith to believe that God was going to give it to him. He didn't have loyalty. He didn't have fear of God. But Tiglath-Pileser attacks Damascus and kills King Rezin and ends the threat to Judah. So, for a time, it seems like that his situation is, he took it from God, he gave it, he got it. It's wrapped up. I took care of it. It's done. And he had no loyalty to God. So then Ahaz falls in love with that altar. He wants one to himself. And he commissions a priest, Uriah, to make him one. And Uriah is a priest, and he should be bold for God. He should stand up for God and say, no, we're not doing this. Even though it's the king, you still got to be bold for God. But Uriah he's complicit. Shows moral cowardice. And he's, this guardian of the temple's sacredness goes ahead and does what Isaiah tells him to do. And he creates this altar, this Assyrian altar, pagan altar, blasphemous pagan altar. And you see, the temple of God had a specific design. God has a specific order and a specific design to everything that he makes. And so the temple was a symbol of, I have order, I have a design that's supposed to be sacred. The universe, God created the universe, it has an order, it has a design. It's not to be, man is not to try to usurp or to try to change or control that design in any way. That'd be like just trying to change the laws of the universe, try to time travel, stuff like that. It's not, we're not supposed to. You understand? That's usurping God's authority. That's usurping God's order. So, that's pretty much what they did when they built this altar. They replicated this pagan altar. And it was a direct insult to God and a sign of their deep-seated idolatry. And Uriah unquestionably is obedient to Ahaz and builds this altar. And so this shows Judah's religious moral decay and their leadership, of the religious leadership. So it was political and religious corruption that had taken place. And they set this altar up in the temple, and they took God's altar, the altar of the Lord, and they put it to the side of the pagan altar. They usurped God's authority, his divine authority. They set it aside and put the pagan altar in its place and put God to the side. And that symbolized the displacement of God's prescribed worship by man-made tradition. That's how we do today when we put these man-made traditions in place of actual worship of God. Pure worship of God alone. When we try to pad our worship with these pagan practices that are traditions. It's one of the reasons why for years I have not put up a Christmas tree. Because it's a pagan practice. Christmas is about the birth of Christ. That's the only focus that should be on our minds that day. It's the gift that was given to us. That was through a baby born in Bethlehem. So, the same way with Easter, I don't call it Easter, it's Resurrection Sunday. Because it's the Resurrection Sunday. Easter is a pagan goddess. So, then the last part of the chapter closes with Ahaz's death. And look back to what the changes that he made showed that he was trying to make his own form of worship. He took God's design and changed it to be his own. He was setting up his own worship, his own gods, with his own traditions. And the church has done so much of that throughout the centuries. It looks nothing like the original church with the apostles. That's a problem. The Bible talks about in the last days the church has to become spotless, without spot or wrinkle. When Christ comes back for his bride, it's without spot or wrinkle. It can't be blended with pagan practices. It has to be purified. Everybody's praying and hoping for Jesus to come take his bride. Who's thinking about getting it cleaned up for him? The final verses summarize Ahaz's reign, which is defined by his unfaithfulness. His story serves as a stark warning about the consequences of idolatry and trusting in human power over divine providence. His son Hezekiah, in contrast, would later reverse many of his father's wicked acts. So the next generation would realize, we gotta change some stuff. We gotta get back to what's important. We gotta stop putting aside the Lord's altar and putting our own ways and our own practices in the place of it. Part of God's design in his order is his design and his order for the church, which is laid out in the book of Acts, the apostles, and laid out through the pages of the prophets. The fivefold ministry, the apostles and the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, the teachers. How many churches are putting emphasis on that these days? Man's ways will always fail. Man's ways are imperfect. They will not last. God said, from dust you came, and dust you'll return. Man's ways, that's where it's headed. The only thing that's eternal is God and God's ways. It's entire all those messages that I've been given on this Bone Kings, it's the same story over and over and over. They saw what was right in their own eyes. They set up for themselves their own gods and their own form of religion, their own form of worship. And in the process, they forgot God. They lost sight of what was important. They lost sight of the King of Kings. The Bible tells us to keep our eye on Jesus. You better get your eyes on him. You better keep him there. I love y'all. I'll see y'all at sunset tomorrow.